Alright, in this video tutorial we're going to do a little tiny watercolor painting, and I'm going to be using my Winsor & Newton watercolor kit. It's a portable kit. It comes all contained in this little box. It even comes with a little compartment for you to put water. And I went ahead and drew out a small little sketch, and I drew it on this Strathmore watercolor postcard paper. It's 140-pound cold pressed watercolor paper. And on the back is a postcard if you want to send it to somebody. So I'm going to be doing a little golf painting here. I like to play golf, and golf courses are really nicely landscaped. So I'm going to start up here at the top with the sky, and I'm just using a little bit of blue. And I'm going right across the top of my pad here, adding some blue, and I'm actually adding it pretty concentrated, and then I'm using water to just pull that blue down. And anywhere where the blue is a little inconsistent, when it dries it's going to look like clouds. So I'm just going to let whatever happens happen there. I'm going to work around my tree and just bring it down to the horizon line. There's going to be a little bit of the ocean underneath the skyline. And now I've mixed a little bit of green in with the blue to make the ocean a little bit of a different hue than the sky. Again, I'm going to work around my tree, and I'm going to bring it down to where we're going to have some rolling hills behind the green here. And again, where some of the water is mixing with the color in the background, you might see that on the horizon. I'm going to let that happen because, again, it's going to look like clouds when it dries. Now I've mixed a little bit of yellow and green, and I'm going to start working on the base color for the tree. And again, a little bit of yellow and green for the hill behind the green. And these are all areas where light's going to be coming through. In just a few minutes, you'll see the shadowed areas. And now I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that green, make it a little bit darker. It's going to be a little bit of shadow on that hill. I'm going to do the same thing in the tree with the same green that I've mixed. And this is just blue, green, and yellow that I've mixed to make this color. I'm going to have some rocks back there on the hill, so I'm going to kind of work around that area. Now to get this darker value, what I've done is added some blue and a little bit of brown, and that's going to make more of a natural black. And I'm letting these colors kind of mix a little bit because the area is still wet. It's okay. There's some little tufts of grass in the background, but they're so far away they're going to appear dark. And again, now I'm starting to add some of the shadowed areas and just making it a little bit darker each application that I put on. In this painting, my light source is actually coming from the left side of the scene. Right now it might appear like it's coming from the right side, but when it's finished you'll be able to see that. Now I've sped this painting up a little bit because I want you to see every step of the painting. The entire painting took me about 40 minutes, so that would be a pretty long video, so that's why it's sped up. And again, I keep going around. This is actually a darker grass anyway, but it is a little shadowed in areas. So again, to make that color, just a little bit of blue, green of course, and a little bit of brown in there. I don't use black at all. You can make some more natural black by mixing blue and brown together. We're going to have some sand traps over there, so I'm going to avoid that area right now. And then we're going to have kind of a little bit of a rock wall here in the foreground. Now it's time to start adding the color of the green itself. So I'm going to be using that yellow green that I mixed earlier, and I'm going to just wash it, which means I'm basically going to add the color at the top of the green and then just add some water and pull it down so I have a smooth transition. I'm also going to add a little bit of yellow to the bottom of that. And I'm going to go back to the foreground area. It's allowed to dry just a little bit and add a little bit more of that green color to it. Now that my tree has dried a bit, I'm going to go back and add a little bit more of the details. Each time I'm just getting a little darker with the value. And again, it may look like it's black on the video. It's actually just blue and brown mixed together. And now I'm going to deepen up those shadows in the background. And remember, when you're using watercolor, it's going to dry just a little bit lighter than how it is when you put it down. So keep that in mind as you work. A little bit of shadow around the green back there. And a little bit of a shadow to the right side. Alright, now that my water's had a little bit of time to dry, I'm going to go back and define the horizon line just a bit more, make it just a little bit darker in value, just so we have a little bit more contrast. And you can see up there at the sky, now that our watercolor's had a chance to dry up there, that sky does look like it has a little bit of clouds to it. A little bit of a shadow to the rocks with just some blue. And using the same darker blue, I'm going to start to define my rocks in the foreground. Remember, this is going to be a little bit of a rock wall. There should be a little bit of shadow in the sand traps as well, so I'm going to do that with blue. Now that I've got a good idea of where my shadows are on my rocks, I'm going to go back and add a little bit of highlight on the opposite side of that with a little bit of yellow and orange mixed together. Just to give us a light source. And we've got a sand trap here in the foreground, so it's going to need some shadow, again, some blue. I'm going to make this little bit of fairway in the foreground a little bit more natural looking with some yellow on top of that area now that it's had a chance to dry. And you'll notice I keep going back to that tree. That tree has a lot of detail on it, and each layer that I put on I need to let dry before I put the next layer on top of it. So that's why I'll work in a different area and go back to it. If you have a really detailed painting, you may do a layer of paint and then let it dry completely before you go back. Now I'm going to just darken up the areas around the rocks a little bit with blue and brown mixed together. After spending a few minutes with the rocks, they are starting to look a little bit more realistic. One thing to keep in mind is that objects that are closer to you are obviously going to be more detailed, so there needs to be a little bit more contrast a lot of times to create that illusion of detail. And that's what I'm doing here with the rocks, trying to build up the contrast just a little bit. Now I'm going to take a sponge that's got a texture on it, and while the paint's still a little bit wet, I'm going to go over the top of it. And that texture is just going to be spread over the rocks, make them look a little bit more realistic by adding a little bit of texture to it. Now every green needs to have a flag to aim at, so this flag is a stripe flag, so I'm just going to add the dark values. I'm going to let the areas in between just kind of not be there, although it'll look like they're still light. Add a little bit of red over the top of that and add the color of the flag. And now I need a little bit more shadow on my green, so I'm going to go back with some blue and just wash that in on top. And I also need a shadow coming from the flag, cast to finish the flag onto the green. So again with some blue, pull that out. And then basically that's my tiny little painting done in watercolor paint.